Have you guys ever noticed that the station canopy at Upper Ferntree, Gully has a very interesting historical quirk? You may notice, on the original station building, that Platform 2's canopy is slightly lower than Platform 1's canopy. This is actually thanks to the former Gembrook line, now known as Puffing Billy. You see, the narrow gauge line that Puffing Billy runs along today starts at Belgrave, just behind the current Metro train's broad gauge station, but it didn't always start there. When the line was built in 1900, the broad gauge only went to Upper Ferntree Gully. Back then there were no electric trains, and the hills around the area were considered very steep and hard to traverse. At the time, the Victorian railways were very short of money, so they needed a way to build cheap, yet efficient and profitable railway. After much negotiation, the VR decided to trial building 4 2-feet gauge railway. Engineers suggested that the gauge should be 2 feet 6 inches gauge, as it allows for larger and stronger rolling stock, with limited effect on the maximum gradient 1 in 30 pins and curve radius 2 chains. The Victorian railways agreed with these suggestions, and the change was made. One of the 4 railways was decided to be an extension off the broad gauge line at Upper Ferntree Gully, climbing its way through the hills to Gembrook. The line was opened in 1900. It had stops at Upwey, Tacoma, opened in 1924, Belgrave, Selby, opened in 1904, Menzies Creek, Clematis, opened in 1902 as Paradise Valley, renamed in 1921, Emerald, Lakeside, opened as a small halt in 1944, Wright, opened in 1904, Cockatoo, opened as Devon, renamed in 1904, Fielder, opened in 1928, and Gembrook. It ran until a landslide blocked the line between Belgrave and Selby in 1953. Some farewell trains were run from Upper Gully to Belgrave in 1954, known as the Young Sun Specials. The line was saved from the scrap heap by a passionate team of volunteers. Tourist trains ran between Upper Ferntree Gully and Belgrave from 1955 to 1958. When the broad gauge line was extended to a new terminus at Belgrave, the narrow gauge was pulled up, and Puffing Billy eventually moved to a new station at Belgrave, the Puffing Billy Belgrave we use today, and began running out on the hills tracks again. But we are here to talk about what's left of the line between Upper Ferntree Gully and Belgrave. So first off, as I started off the video with, was the canopies at different heights. The Platform 2 canopy is lower than Platform 1, since that platform used to be the narrow gauge platform, but that has since changed. And now both sides are broad gauge, but since the building is heritage listed, there's nothing we can do to change it. It's not that much lower either, so I reckon it'd be fine to leave as is. Next, crossing over Railway Road, we come to the site of the former sheds and loco maintenance facilities, which nowadays is marked by a mound of ballast in a flat area. Here, there used to be a 3-road narrow gauge shed, which could house 5 NA-class locomotives. There was an inspection pit here, and a coal stage. There also used to be a broad gauge siding stretching behind the sheds up to the Ferntree Gully quarry. Remnants of all these things have since been removed, leaving nearly no trace. The alignment is taken over by the current broad gauge line up to Upwey. The former level crossing across Burwood Highway is non-existent, as the whole road and rail line have been realigned and rebuilt. Instead of crossing Burwood Highway at a level crossing, the line now goes on a bridge passing over the road, and the road was realigned to fit under the bridge, then have a new intersection with Mount Dandenong Tourist Road. When the broad gauge line was built through Upwey, the whole town center was rebuilt to fit with the new railway line. And instead of curving around into a small platform with a loop siding like the narrow gauge line did, a full island platform was built on a different angle to the narrow gauge station. Then, the main road was moved and rebuilt to run alongside the new line, passing under it about 400 meters out of the main area of Upwey. This replaced a level crossing just beyond Upwey Station. Out of Upwey, the new line somewhat follows the original alignment, just a bit straighter. The new Tacoma station is lower down the hill than the narrow gauge original. Nothing remains of the old station. However, after Tacoma, the shared bike and pedestrian rail trail actually follows the old narrow gauge alignment. Nearing Belgrave, the new broad gauge line continues straight over a bridge across a small gully. whereas the narrow gauge alignment curves around on a large embankment. This large embankment is used by the rail trail and is very clear and picturesque. After this embankment, the old alignment crosses the new alignment on the approach to Belgrave Station. The old Belgrave Station is on the site of the current Belgrave Station car park. Nothing remains of this alignment or the old station. After Belgrave, the line used to pass under the bridge at the end of Belgrave Broad Gauge Station and continued to Gembrook, using the line Puffing Billy still runs on today. And with that, we have scoured along Puffing Billy's original line. It's honestly quite sad that not much remains. It is very clear that they wanted to completely remove all evidence of the narrow gauge line's existence in the name of progress. Thanks for watching. Remember, 12A is the best NA, and remember to subscribe and like. I might do some similar videos on forgotten alignments on some of the other VR 2 feet 6 inches narrow gauge lines in the future, but for now, see you in the next one.